And we're live. Welcome everybody to our Masterclass session with Rabobank on how they 5X'ed their employee advocacy return on investment. We were just laughing here because the camera always tells us to check our hair and smile before we go live. So hopefully we don't forget to smile throughout the session.
And my hair is fine, right? Yeah.
From what I can tell from the small image, we'll blow up the images in just a second. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Something we like doing here at Smart Sessions is to hear where people are calling in from. So you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen, you should have a little window that says questions. Feel free to use that question tab and just type in there where you're calling in from and joining us today. We really like to see kind of where our audience is from in the chat. So if you have a second, just go ahead and type in there. And I can see the first responses are already starting to come in. But today, I want to welcome our very special guest from Rabobank. We have Tessa, social media lead, and Tessa, of course, has been running the employee advocacy program at Rabobank for a while now. So we thought we'd get her on a session, pick her brain a little bit, because probably a lot of people here in the chat, maybe you're running an advocacy program, maybe you're thinking about running one. So we thought we'd bring in somebody who's run a very successful one and see what they have to say. So Tessa, maybe you would you like to introduce yourself, say a few words about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the compliments, Alex. Yeah, I'm Tessa. I'm social media lead at Rabobank, and I know that means different kind of things in different companies. For the Rabobank, it means that I'm responsible of the corporate social media channels and responsible for the employee advocacy program, and that's why we're here for. So, yeah, let's talk about employee advocacy.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you, and thanks for joining us. And where are you calling in from, just for the people in the audience to hear?
Yeah, from the Netherlands, in Linden, for people who live in the Netherlands. I don't think you know it, but it's a very small thing.
Well, hey, the only place I've been to in the Netherlands is Deventer. So I haven't even been to Amsterdam, just Deventer.
Most of the times we hear Amsterdam, so it's different.
Right. And just looking at the chat, I see people calling in from Portugal, Belgium, UK, Kuala Lumpur. Always great to see you, Malar. And it's probably around midnight for you too. So happy to have you joining. Lots of people from the Netherlands, India, Houston. So we do have a very, very broad and global audience here. And Helsinki with Anita. Good to see Helsinki represented. I'm, of course, Alex. I'm marketing director here at Smart. If you've been on our sessions before, you've probably heard me talk. I'm also based here in Helsinki. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Rabobank and their employee advocacy program. Just really quickly on housekeeping, we'll have 4 kind of broader topics surrounding the Rabobank employee advocacy program, just to kind of probe a little on what they did, how they did it, so you guys can get some ideas. Q&A will happen throughout the session, so that same tab that you're using to type in where you're from, feel free to drop in questions. Whenever you hear me or Tessa say something interesting, feel free to drop in a question. Tessa, I see you're in bandwidth mode now. We lost your video, but are you still here? Are you still hearing us?
Yeah, I still hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, we hear you just fine. Sometimes, so don't worry, guys. Sometimes the webinar platform Livestorm will do that if there's internet connectivity issues. It just turns off video. But Tessa's still here, so she'll still be able to talk to us. So Tessa, and everybody, let us know if you're not hearing somebody for some reason. All right, but I think with that we can go ahead and get started with the first topic we wanted to cover here, and that is, of course, why Rabobank decided to invest in employee advocacy. Now, a lot of you tuning in today, you might be running an advocacy program, you might be thinking about running an advocacy program, and for a lot of people, the reasons are a little different for like deciding to invest in employee advocacy. But Tessa, maybe you can get us started. And the big question: why did Rabobank decide to go the route of employee advocacy?
Yeah, of course. We started in 2016, I believe. So we have a program for over 5 years now. And what we initially started is that in the history, we are a cooperative bank. We are a socially responsible bank. And I think within the Netherlands, we almost had an office in every village and every city in the Netherlands. So we were always close to our customer. And when digitalization came, people weren't going to the offices anymore because, yeah, for instance, I think you have your bank always with you because you have your app
Yes.
on your mobile phone. So you don't have to go to the bank anymore. So how I think the question we got is how can we be close if people are not going to the office anymore? And I believe we have 30,000 employees in the Netherlands. Look at my network. I believe I have 800 followers on LinkedIn. So with our employees, we can have a massive impact on society. Instead of doing it in bricks, we're doing it in person where people are at. For instance, I think both of us were constantly on social media during the day. So I think it is a better, faster way to connect with people. LinkedIn told us that we had a massive digital footprint on LinkedIn. So we already had it. And now we just created a program which was facilitating people just to be more digital savvy. So I think initially we started just to be closer to our customers in a way that's more in this era.
Right. And you mentioned, obviously LinkedIn being the big platform, of course, in terms of employee advocacy. A lot of people know that LinkedIn is a great platform to kind of to do employee advocacy on. Are there any other platforms involved? Like, do you find your customers interacting with Rabobank on other platforms as well, or is it mainly LinkedIn?
Yeah, initially we had a digital footprint on LinkedIn. It was already massive via our employees. But yeah, of course, we're like me as well. I'm on Instagram, Snapchat. I think I'm on all social media channels, but that's part of my job. I think everyone has multiple social media channels, but it depends on which topic you have the content.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is most used because it's the business channel. People are more
Right.
comfortable sharing content on LinkedIn because it's more for business. So, okay, it's for my work, so I'll put it on LinkedIn. If we look at sponsorships or things that more kind of content, we see that it's more often shared on Facebook. So I think it's part of the content which is shared on different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Smart provides different channels, so it's good. But what we see is that most often is LinkedIn used. Yeah.
Interesting. I want to get back to that a bit down the session. I want to ask you a little more details about how you kind of structured the program. And this, you bring up an interesting point, which is the different type of content for different platforms. So hopefully we can dig into that a little more later. But maybe if we kind of stay on the topic of you mentioned, you brought up this great point, which was, with digitalization, you wanted to, and wanting to bring and build these lasting relationships and get closer to your customers, being one of the main drivers. Is that something specific for the banking industry, or do you see other industry verticals dealing with a similar situation?
I think a lot of industries have to cope with that people aren't going to bricks or offices or etc. anymore. So I think it's adjusting to the digital era. Yeah, of course. And within the financial institute, I think it's even more difficult because our important asset is trust. So
Right.
I think it's almost more difficult because you're putting people out there. I had multiple discussions with compliance just to say, okay, we're going to address some things with our employees. We're going to put them on social media, and yeah, they're going to talk to people. That's scary, but I think the chances are way higher than the risk. And if you have a good program which is facilitating people and just learning how they can use it, yeah, they're already doing it. So just tweak them and just tell, okay, look, we have some rules in the Netherlands. We have advertising rules. Please look at them and try to be on point. And if you do that, I think that it doesn't add up to the chances you have.
Yeah, that's you bring up another good point, which is kind of, especially if you think about a tightly regulated industry like banking and finance in general, you must have had, when launching this program, you must have had to deal with PR and your kind of public relations. Any advice there? Like, how did you get them to be on board with the whole idea?
Yeah, what I do, if you hear something, my dog is hearing something as well. So if he's going to bark, it's my dog.
Okay.
I think it's important just to have regular conversations with compliance and legal, because this is, yeah, it is a difficult topic. Just maintain your conversation and just make sure that you're on the same page. And what we did is, together with our social media agency, who is helping us with our employee advocacy program, um, we had multiple discussions. Okay, how are we going to secure that people are still using the advertising rules? And I believe that Merkel created a page in our presentation. We went to all the local branches in the Netherlands, and we said, okay, look, if you're going to place, look at these rules. Just have them. And I think we had it in all our presentations. We had it in all our e-learning. So we're constantly repeating, okay, please do so. Please post something on social media, but just keep this in mind. Keep trying to inform instead of advertise. It's a simple rules. If you're just constantly repeating them, yeah, of course, you need to be safe,
Right.
but it's possible if you just
Right.
inform instead of advertise.
Yeah, inform over advertising. I think, and in advocacy in general, that's something that we see a lot of our clients and a lot of people emphasizing, like, rather than thinking of this as a way to just advertise something. There are different channels for that, but if you're
Yeah, and it's
actually
more natural because you're
exactly
talking to your own network, your own audience. It's not like I'm going to say to my friend, you need to buy this and this and this. No, we're going to have, like, for instance, if I'm going to buy sneakers, I'm going to talk to my peers and my friends and I say, okay, where do you bought them? How is your experience? It's not like, oh, you need to purchase this. It's really cool. No, most of the times I'm just discussing things with my friends and my network, not telling them they need to purchase something.
exactly.
It's more natural just to inform and just have a conversation about it.
Right. That there's an interesting question here from Jim in the chat, that we're not considering launching an advocacy program and it feels a bit overwhelming. Do you have advice on where to start? Now, I know one of the, Jim, for your and for everybody listening, we also have a segment down at the end talking about kind of learnings and where to start, and like where to start if you're starting again from scratch. But maybe, to answer this question here, what would be the first thing you'd advise Jim to do when considering starting an advocacy program?
Yeah, I recognize the questions from Jim because, yeah, I think the program for us is a big success, but it also costs a lot of capacity, and you need to be sure that you can handle it. So what we did is we have a program which is made with our social media agency, who was doing the employee advocacy program, and I think that's very important that you have an institute or an agency who's going to help you, and it's a win-win because they're creating a program and they can sell it to other departments from your company. So if you're doing it in a way that it helps you and it helps them as well, you have a founded program, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of capacity, but yeah, it's going to cost you some budget for other departments or other regions. But it's good to have a good program and make sure that what we did is that the social media agency, they created a program, and we have, for every local branch who wants to start with Smart, they're going to send out a survey. They're going to ask, okay, how digital savvy are your employees? And every employee can fill in the survey. They're going to plot in a matrix, and in the right hand corner, you're having a program for digital heroes. If you're not the digital savvy and you're not willing to learn, we have something else for you. So within that matrix, the 4 quarters, we have something for everyone. And that's can be a whole program, that can be one masterclass, and can be the e-learnings. We have 2 e-learnings in our own system. We created them, and that's for beginners, just filling your profiles. That's for advanced. How is your personal brand? So we just looked at the persons we have at the companies. We made sure that we have something for everyone to learn, or just to touch on social media and think, oh, that's nice, I want to learn something, but I just don't want to get involved that much.
Right. So, and that's probably, a good way to start. You kind of give employees a way to participate if they, if they feel the drive. There's another question here I wanted to, actually, now there are two good questions, but we'll start with the one from Nico here. Maybe you have some insight based on the impact of the financial crisis. And of course, the financial crisis did drive some negative perception around banks, and like, is there any lingering effect on employee engagement and motivation levels to participate? Is that something that has showed its head in the Rabobank program, the financial crisis?
Very good question. But the financial crisis before this program even started, I think, of course, that's something which does of course it does something to an employee, because I remember if you're on birthdays and people were asking something about your bank, you thought, oh no, not this again. Fortunately, in the Netherlands, Rabobank was one of the banks that didn't need support. So for our bank, it was something you said, okay, I can elaborate on this, but it was not for everyone. And I do think also in times of crisis, if your company is willing to communicate transparently, you can always tell something. And I think our bank, if I use just our bank as an example, we have a lot of knowledge within our bank. We have a lot of people who are experts on different areas, so they can share their knowledge. And for employee advocacy, I think that's a channel that can always be used. Only the motivation of employees, of course, that will be difficult. But I think if they're thought leaders, if their people are really involved in their job, I think if you can boost them, or I don't know the correct English word for it, but if you can use it and you can make them enthusiastic and say, you're the expert, you're our biggest asset, please do so, where we have all the trust in you. I think if you can push them or make them even bigger, I think they will always be willing to share something if it's based on knowledge.
I think, and that's a great point, and I think that segues nicely into what we're going to talk about next, about kind of how to get employees activated in the program. And I see there are a bunch of great questions related to these topics. So I think hopefully some of these we can cover in the next topic. But I think in the interest of time, let's go ahead and move to topic number 2. And topic number 2 reads, how do you design a program your employees will volunteer to join? And now, also to let everybody in the chat know, we also have actually a written kind of story on the Rabobank program, which also provides some insight into this. I'm sure, I guess, Anita, if you're listening, maybe you can drop the link to that case study in the chat as well. But one of the big things that you said when we were working on this program is that your employees that you never had to force anybody to join the program. You didn't have to force employees to get engaged and get active, and they came to you and felt like they needed to be a part of it. How did you manage that? How did you manage to build a program where employees felt that they needed to participate?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky, because in our company, it's almost like there was a FOMO, or fear of missing out. So I need to be part of the program. I think I communicated one time in 2018 that we started the pilot of Smart. And that's the only time I told anything on our internet about Smart, or about Smart itself, because I think 200 people were coming at us and said, okay, I need to be part of this program. I need to do something. And I think the most important thing we had is that we already had a program in place. So we said, okay, good. Yeah, okay, we're going to support you. We don't have the time right now, but we have an agency who's going to help you, or I have an hour a month which I can answer all your questions you have. And I still have that hour a month. because every month I still have 12 employees who are asking everything they want to know about Smart or the employee advocacy or something else. So that's good. I think you need to invest a lot at the beginning of the program just to talk to with multiple colleagues of mine. I think it's very important that you take the time just to make sure that in the beginning phase that people are really enthusiastic and they're really on board, and it's like they're going to spread the word. It's like they're paying it forward. So if you have multiple ambassadors and they're very fond of the program, they're very fond of Smart, yeah, they will say to different colleagues as well. And if you have a couple of examples, yeah, you need to share the stars or the best practices, and they will share it again. It's like the same in social media. If you have great content, please share it, and they will share it as well.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come. There's been a few questions in the chat about kind of incentivization and ways that you got employees to participate. I think Erica and Jim both had questions like how did you incentivize employees in any way? Did you give them some kind of bonuses? Maybe I've heard of a customer who, for the top kind of advocate and top smarper for the quarter, they would give priority parking the next quarter. So there's like something material in it for them. Was there any way that you
work right now? But yeah,
I know. I was going to make that joke, but I figured that everybody figured that it's probably not a good incentive right now.
No.
But did you incentivize employees in any way, or was it simply enough to just kind of like we just said, kind of build it and they came to you?
Yeah, I talked a lot about it with the previous support manager from success manager from Smart, and he said, "Yeah, perhaps you need to have some cakes with Smart logos or something like that." And we laughed a very amount of it, but I didn't use any incentive. But I think, again, I'm very lucky because the Rabobank is a social responsible bank. We have our employees are natural ambassadors, and I think what helps us is that we truly believe that with our knowledge we have within the whole company, we can really help our networks, and that if we can connect people, we're really helping them. And for us, it's enough of an incentive. And yeah, we have a leaderboard on Smart, and yeah, there is gamification, and it works because sometimes I get an email and there's, "Oh, I'm not in the leaderboard. There's something wrong within the system because I'm sure I should be number one." So yeah, it works. The gamification works. For now, I've implemented it in 2018, and we're still working on the quality. And I think quality needs to be for quantity. And what you get is that you get points for sharing content. And of course, if your content is performing well, you get enough more points. But I think it needs to be on the quality of the content which is placed, and that's the focus right now. And yeah, I think next year we're looking at the gamification part of it, and then I think it could work even better. But no, we didn't use an incentive, and I think for us, it's really helping, contributing to our mission, which is growing a better world together. And I think we're doing it because we're sharing knowledge with our networks and connecting people.
Right. And I think it's actually surprising when we talk to our client base and the clients running advocacy programs through Smart, a lot of them say that usually it's enough to, of course, gamification is always a nice way, and you can incentivize people, like the parking slot was one example, but often it's enough to simply explain, why you're doing this, why we're asking you to participate in this program, and a lot of the times also explaining what's in it for the employee is also can also be a factor. Becoming a thought leader in your network, driving more conversations, driving more traffic. It's all kind of, it's a win-win essentially. So it doesn't always need
I think
to be
that's
material.
a great point, because if you look at our employee advocacy program right now, one of the biggest subjects within our program is personal branding and thought leadership. And I think that's what's in it for the employee. We're going to build your personal brand. It's not only, I think it's good, it reflects on the Rabobank, but it's not our priority. Our priority is that our employees are using their knowledge to take a platform, to take the stand and say, okay, I really know about this stuff. And if you need anything, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here. And I think that helps our employees. And of course, when I'm doing a great job and I'm everywhere on social media, it will reflect on Rabobank. So I think that's secondary. It needs to be primarily on your employees and what you're doing for them.
Exactly. I wanted to ask a question related to the actual kind of the way you structured the program and the platform. I've seen a bunch of different approaches to this. Some people do it based on regions. Some people do it based on departments. I've even seen like languages, topics. What was the approach you took to kind of structuring the way the platform looks?
Yeah, what I'm very happy with within Smart is that you have the language selection. So if I'm choosing in my settings, then I only want to see the Dutch and English content. I will only see that languages. And that's good because I don't understand Chinese, Portuguese, or Spanish. So I don't need to see that content because I'm not going to share it. So that helps because the platform already has that. And our channel structure is based on our content strategy. So who are we as a bank? What do we find is important? And how can we contribute to those topics? And our content strategy is based on how we can help as a company, as employees, can help our local environment, or it's like the energy transition, financial healthy life. There are topics that we know we can contribute as a bank. So that are the top channels, and the section below is all the local living environment channels. So, for instance, I'm following the channel West Betuwe. That's very Dutch, but that's where I live. And I'm following the channel because I can see content there, which is in my own living environment. And that's interesting for me because I live there, but also for my network. Because if there's something happening there, I'm going to share it on my Facebook. There's a sponsor event, please go. You can go figure skating or something like that. Yeah, of course. So what we see is that the local channels are performing well because it's just more personal. And it's more personal because I live there, because half of my network is living there. So that's natural. And the rest of the channels which are performing well are the corporate news, the bigger campaigns, and of always the best performing posts are the fraud. And I think that's great because our employees are really taking responsibility and they say, okay, I'm going to inform my network that something that's happening. Please, if you have a text, if you have an email and you need to transfer money, don't. And those posts are always performing well.
That's super interesting, and like that really kind of, I think that what you just said is kind of the essence of it, because that's an issue that, of course, we're all kind of weary of fraud, and if we can do anything to, like, if I get a fraudulent message, if I get a fraudulent email or a fraudulent text, I do inform my kind of friends and family and sometimes the company about what's going on. So super interesting. Like, kind of off the back of that, you mentioned this type of content. Is there any other kind of type of content that performs particularly well, like some employee favorites?
Yeah, I think the more concrete, the better. And that's the fraud. That's really something. And current affairs, what is happening right now. So it's always good to just go with the flow on what's happening right now, and people are going to react to it because it's now.
Right.
So yeah, most of the times it's fraud, the current affairs, the local branches, and some corporate news things which are important for business and for the bank itself.
Right. And back at the beginning, I remember you mentioned
and research. Is always performing. Instead of, it depends on what kind of research, but if you look at the housing market, and it's kind of content performs well as well.
Right. And at the very beginning, you mentioned about the different types of content, because you're obviously working with LinkedIn, Facebook, kind of all the major social media platforms. Is there any, do you notice what type of content, is there any kind of difference on what type of content works in each network? Is there any kind of differences there?
Yeah, I think it also depends on what company you're from. But
of course,
the fraud posts work well everywhere. But what you can see is that the most of the audience is on Facebook, but it's more that the audiences are there. What I can see in the sponsor, like sports events, etc., is more on Facebook. LinkedIn is more business related, more SME, as more high end, or the research post will perform better on LinkedIn because it's just more difficult to reach. So it's more like how the channels are structured and what kind of content fits there better. What I can see on Facebook is more the day-to-day business that's performing better. And on Instagram, what we see is our corporate of identity that works good.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason I kind of brought this topic up was because one of the cool things you guys do is that you'll look at the different types of content and how it resonates in different networks and kind of base your strategy a little bit off of that. So it's a really cool and sophisticated approach to advocacy, rather than just put one post and blast that everywhere, essentially. But I think, again, in interest of time, we can keep moving on to topic number 3. And now I see there are a bunch of kind of ROI related questions and a bunch of results related questions in the chat. So hopefully now we can get to some of these, because topic number 3 is 1 year of results from a dedicated advocacy program. So when we took a look, and Anita put the kind of story, the Rabobank gets close to their customer story, in the chat. Feel free to check that out, everybody. That was kind of looking back at 1 calendar year. So if we look back at kind of the success of the Rabobank advocacy program, how do you start measuring success? Is like, how do you measure success of your advocacy program? Is it something like clicks and likes, or is it something beyond that? What does success look like for you guys?
Depends for which stakeholder I'm looking. If you look at the managing team, of course, it's return on investment. And I think it's important as well, because you're investing in a program, investing in tooling for the program. And it needs to, you need to pay it. So it needs to have something for you as well. Of course, what's in it for you? There's always a point. If I look at myself, or when I'm posting posts or content, and I think that's important for the employee advocacy program as well, I always look at the engagement and involvement, because if I have 800 followers, and for instance for this masterclass I put out a post on LinkedIn, I had more than 100 likes, etc. I think that's most important, because if I'm going to play something, I want to know if people are involved. If they're not involved, why am I placing something? I want to know if I'm helping them with my knowledge, or if I'm telling something which is interesting. But if they're not going to react on it, they probably don't want to read it. And I think that's the same for the advocacy program as well. If I look in Smart on the results, and I'm very fond of the analytics page within Smart, I always look at, okay, how much reactions do we have? How much clicks do we have? How much likes do we have? Because if you're placing content for your network, for your own audience, you need to know if they're involved. If they're not involved, you're telling something that people just don't find interesting. And reach, I think it's a great number. And what I do is that I reflect it on the corporate page channel, and I will look, okay, if we have this amount of employees who are sharing it, and we have a corporate page channel, I think we need 10 employees to have the same result on our corporate page channel. So it's good to compare, but it's reach. And reach also can be that people just scroll over it. You don't know if they're really reading it. So I think it's for organic content, I think it's really important to look at the engagement and involvement of your content.
Right. So you mentioned user engagement, and as Jim had a question on defining user engagement and employee advocacy. How do you define that? Is it someone who has read something or someone who has shared something? I can of course talk to how we define it on the Smart platform, but maybe what is it for you? What is user engagement?
Yeah, there's also 2 sides. We have user engagement of our employees within Smart, and we make sure that our employees are always using Smart, because we build in our system, if you're not using it after 3 months, you're out. And that sounds harsh, but it's social media. So how much do you check your own social media channels? It is more than one time in 3 months.
Right.
So that's the user engagement from our own employees within Smart, and user engagement of the post. Yeah, I look at the numbers we have for now at Smart, and I can see that we're performing well, and that I think from every piece of content we have 8 clicks or reactions or something like that. So that's are good numbers. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. Well, that's maybe Jim can clarify if he has something more specific, but that's basically, and I've discussed your kind of engagement strategy before, and it works for Rabobank, and it's like that is essentially what has propelled you guys to super high engagement rates.
Yeah, and I think that creates a little bit of fear of missing out as well, because if you're not using it, you're out. It sounds harsh, but it's how it works in the world and how social media works. If you have your timeline, you're looking at your timeline constantly or often, a couple of times a day, not one time in a year.
Yeah, there's a question from Erica earlier, and a question from Cameron here around just in general employee advocacy ROI, because you mentioned like depending on the stakeholder, you'll measure the success in different ways. So when you, and of course the question a lot of people have is how do you kind of justify this program to maybe management? How do you ensure that a program pays for itself? What do you look for there? Is it something is it like a reduction in ad spend? Is it just like basically like visibility created through social media and how much that would cost? What's the approach?
Yeah, for me, it is the estimated earned media value that Smart has in its analytics, which is based on benchmarks. And I agree with the benchmarks, otherwise I wouldn't use the numbers. So yeah, the estimated earned media value, I think that's very important. And of course, you can say we spend less on advertising budget, but you'll spend it on different things because you're going to reallocate it. So that's fine. But yeah, the estimated earned media value for me is the KPI for the managing team. They say, okay, if we have had put this in advertising, it should have costed us $1 million or something like that. So that's the number I'm going to take back to my managing team.
Right, exactly, and that's kind of the basis for it, right? You evaluate how much you would have had to spend to create this kind of visibility, and for everybody in the chat and listening in, when we talk about 5xing the investment, that's kind of what the number is based on. But the great thing about running an advocacy program, for example, some of the stuff we've talked about here is, you get the benefits of employees themselves being more informed about what's going on in the business. Maybe one of those clicks or views in social media leads to a new client for Rabobank. Maybe it leads to a new hire. So there are so many different ways that you can connect in like benefits outside of just looking at earned media value.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the estimated earned value via Smart, it's always more relevant because as employee you're sharing it, and as a person you're sharing it with other people. So it's way more authentic than we're doing it via a brand.
Exactly.
I always say people talk to people and not a brand. So I think there's a difference. And what I found really cool is that from the last release, I believe you can label also your campaigns. So what we do now with bigger campaigns, we label the post and we can see in Smart how did Smart contribute to that campaign, and we can compare it with our paid and organic results from that campaign as well.
Yeah. So even kind of taking the analytics and the results beyond, Smart Analytics, looking at it and whatever you might be using, Google Analytics or Eloqua or whatever kind of Adobe Analytics you might be using. That's that, of course, and that's again, anybody listening in and thinking about starting an advocacy program or struggling in communicating the ROI. That's where you really start kind of showing senior management, how you are moving the needle when you can kind of connect it to bigger campaigns like Tessa just mentioned. There are a few questions here in the chat. I wanted to ask, so Marianne had a question around prevent the feeling of spam on social channels because your employees can be in the same networks and if they're sharing the same post. Do you see that as being an issue? There's also a question, earlier related to this. So just wondering if you had any input on, does it feel spammy? I actually have also an answer to this, but I want you to answer first.
At the beginning of the program, yeah, it did. To be honest, not always, but what you saw is that, and I think that is what Smart is a good contributor to, is that people didn't know what to share. So sometimes we put out one post and we gave it to all sector specialists, and they will place exact the same post which we sent via email, and they will place it on the social media. And yeah, I had 6 sector specialists on my timeline, and it was exactly the same message. So that's why I think we started the program in 2016, and 2017 we said, okay, we need to do something different because it's like we're an extended marketing channel of the Rabobank, and that's something we just don't want to be. No, we're authentic, we're a real life person, we're an individual, and we're sharing content. And why are you sending that piece of content to that audience? It's not because you're an extended channel of the Rabobank. No, you're you, and you have your own interests. And I think that is why the channel structure in Smart is very important. And if you're going to implement them or onboard them on Smart, that you say to them, okay, please just follow the channels which are interesting for you. Because I believe we're placing 400 pieces of content on Smart every month. And I don't want to see all that pieces of content because it's way too much. I'm getting an overload of all the content. No, I just want to see the posts which are relevant for me. And that's why I'm subscribing to a couple of channels.
Did you say 400?
I believe we had a month where it was 400 pieces of content. Yeah. No one wants to see all those posts.
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting an overload. And I think it's a great asset that our company is creating that much of content, but it's also something which can be a risk. That's why if we're onboarding people, if we're implementing Smart, we're saying, okay, please follow the channels which you found interesting. If you're not interested from posts about energy transition, don't follow the channels because your timeline will adjust to the channels you will follow.
Exactly. I also want, and it's cool to hear, like, actually starting a structured program managed to reduce the amount of spamminess because people were given the option to be a little more authentic with their with their posts. I wanted to also bring up one thing that's often overlooked with this idea of spamming or being spammy. And if you work for a company with a structured advocacy program, you and your channels might end up seeing more content because you're connected to all of your colleagues who are also participating in the program. When you share, your networks aren't seeing that same feed. So it's actually usually and hardly ever is an issue. But that's cool to hear that you actually like structuring the program actually made you.
And I see one question, I think it's a good one from Jim, and Malar says this as well. We don't have a massive content team. No, we have 40,000 employees, and we have, I think now around 3,500 employees on Smart. They're creating all content. So everyone can place content within Smart. And every channel has a channel manager who's going to approve it and just adjust, okay, and just checking on the advertising rules and if it's okay, is it compliance, etc. So yeah, every employee can create and place content within Smart. That's why the 400 is that high, because no, we don't have a massive content team and it's not going to happen. But we have potentially 40,000 employees who can create content.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you have 3 channel managers per channel, they can just check, okay, is it good? Yeah, okay, check, it can go live on Smart.
Yeah. And there are questions around this kind of, how do you scale making posts? And I think user generated content is a really big piece of the puzzle. Is there like a formal approval process for, like, how do you approve those posts at Rabobank?
Yeah, at Rabobank, only marketing communication specialist can be a channel manager, and they all had the advertising rule e-learning.
Right.
So they know the rules, which are if the post is compliant, if it's okay from the Dutch bank, etc.
All right. Well, that's you guys. You guys heard it here. User-generated content, like it's not just it's not a myth. It can help you create just boatloads of content. I think that's a key learning here. I think we have 15 minutes left, and I do want to cover the last topic. There's a bunch of great questions here still that I hope we can get back to towards the end. But I want to leave enough time for this last topic because this is going to be a pretty interesting one. So topic 4 reads, if Tessa and Rabobank were to start from scratch, what would they do differently? So now you've been running a structured advocacy program, for a while now. What would you do differently if you had to start from the ground up building? Because a lot of people in the audience probably are thinking about starting an advocacy program for the first time. What kind of tips? What would you start? What have you learned?
Create manuals. A lot of questions are about how do I post? How do I approve posts? How do I do anything? And I think that's very important. And for me, what's a struggle is that we're manually put people on the platform, and I think it's good that you have an automated process which people just can request a license for Smart and then are in the platform. So that will help. But I think we had a good program to start with, and that's very important. We had e-learning, we have tailor-made solutions for everyone who wants to do anything on social media. So we can offer anything, and that's important to have on forehand, just to have a program that the capacity is not only you or your team, because if it's going to roll, it for us it was massive. We get a lot of requests, and it was I think it's good to have some support for that. And if you have manuals, it just helps, because sometimes I get questions, how do I approve a post? Here's the manual. And that really helps, because otherwise you get a lot of emails.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like you are like in the Rabobank program. Are you the go-to person that everybody comes with questions, or do you have you delegated some of that to channel managers? Like, do your different channels and departments have some level of autonomy with the program?
No, we have an FM box. We have just one email address for where a lot of colleagues of mine are at. Our social media team from
Right.
communications department of Rabobank is on that email address. So we're helping. I think we're the 4 of us. We're helping all the people who have questions, but there are a lot of questions sometimes. So it's good to have manuals. And in Smart, there is a resources tab. So if you have manuals, please put it there. You just send, you can look at the resources tab in Smart. There you will find all your answers to all your questions.
Try to make it easy so that you don't have to answer the same question again and again.
I think for everyone's sake, if you have that in place, it's just going to save you a lot of time.
Out of curiosity, do you do like written manuals, or do you record videos showing specific actions or something? Is there a difference?
We have
there?
both. We have PowerPoint presentations where it's just step 1, step 2, step 3, and we have videos as well.
Okay, but that's good, like a good insight, because especially when you're talking about one of the things you said was you have thousands of users on the platform, and at the beginning you were putting people in manually, whereas there's also a way to automate that process through integrations. So I think anybody, especially with this type of enterprise scale program, being able to benefit from the integrations, from integrations like that is something probably worth investing at the start. How about that? But that's kind of that can help you scale your users and scale your program really quick. Is there anything that, say somebody's thinking about launching a program, is there anything that isn't obvious that to an employee advocacy program that they could try implementing or try when they start out?
I think in every company there are already people who are doing it. what we saw is that a lot of people who were already sharing content on their social media channels, but we initially didn't know it. So I think if you're going to start, please just go to your regions or your departments and say, do you know any people who are already digital savvy and already use social media channels and are sharing content for our company?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it is already happening. But yeah, for me, I didn't know it yet. So that was the first question I asked myself. Okay, I went to a couple of local banks and said, if you have to name 5 or 10 people, they're already on social media, can you name them? And everyone could name them. So yeah, we could already start it. I think we have 100 local branches now in the Netherlands, and every local bank could name 10 people. So that was very fast, 1,000 people.
That's that's a good approach, and like that's what I love. Like that's maybe not an obvious place to start. Like if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. But you probably, if you're starting from zero, you probably already have employees in the company that are active on social media, and bringing them in from the start. First of all, identifying those, however it may be, like you went and asked people at the branch to name a few. However you can identify those are really good at becoming your kind of internal champions and helping the program grow. And I think that's one of the reasons why you guys have seen so much success, is your ability to kind of hit the ground running in that sense. All right, but those are I think that's good for topic 4. Now I wanted to open. We still have 9 minutes or so, so we could open it up for some open Q&A. I see there are already some questions in the chat, so maybe I can just start going through those. Again, feel free to keep putting them in the right hand side. But maybe if I start with this first question from Anna, this is related to something we were talking about earlier on the user-generated content side. Was it difficult to get employees to suggest content, or did it just come naturally for Rabobank employees?
No, at first not, and that's I think that's the main reason we started out with Smart, because in 2016 we rolled out the national program, and what we saw is that our employees were willing to share content, but they didn't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
So Smart helps them just to find relevant content which they think, oh, this is company approved content, so we can share it. And you have, it's quite similar to the what I just mentioned. Yeah, is that you already have people who are comfortable with it, so amplify them, search them, and say, okay, you're already doing it. Perhaps you can show your magic or tell us how you do it, and others can learn from you. And it's part of our program as well, because our social media agency has a program which is, I think, the Masterclass content creation as well. So you can train your people to do this as well. And what Smart for us is interesting, because we're not sharing external links on our own platform, on our corporate channels, but external links can be shared via Smart. So what we say in Smart, it's not necessary just to put only Rabobank content in Smart. No, you can also put in links from newspapers, other articles. It doesn't matter, because we're sharing knowledge and not per se Rabobank related content. So I think that makes it more easy. If I see a great article on the Dutch bank.nl and it's good, I think it has a good knowledge in it, I can share it in Smart.
Yeah.
So it's lowering the bar.
Right, exactly. And I think that's where a lot of people that's where they truly see the kind of explosive growth in the program, is when you don't limit yourself to just in-house content. When you open it up, you take external thought leadership, you take Financial Times or whatever other kind of.
It feels way more natural, because
exactly
sharing something which is authentic and not just an extended channel from Rabobank.
Exactly. So everybody listening, that's also one thing to keep in mind when you're starting your program. Do kind of keep yourself open to third-party and external content. Don't go hell bent over just having your own content on the platform, because that way it's I'm going to say it's going to be pretty hard to get to 400 pieces of content a month. All right, there's a question from Jim here about estimated earned media value. Could you elaborate on that metric? I can take a crack at that, and maybe, Tessa, you can also chime in if you have something to add. But the way the Smart platform works is that whenever you share a piece of content from the platform and it hits social media, when people start viewing that, and especially when they start clicking on the link or the post in social media, that registers in Smart. And now, if you've worked in paid media or advertising, you'll know that a lot of the social media platforms, charge you a certain amount for placing ads on their platform. And there's a number of ways to measure and pay for those ads, but one of them is cost per click. So every time somebody clicks on a piece of content, you have to pay a certain amount. So Smart takes those benchmarks, like say, how much would it cost you to get one click on LinkedIn, and then uses that as a basis to measure kind of what your estimated return is on those posts. Now, the reason we say estimated is because, of course, the actual value of the click is determined by each platform and each post individually. Like you'll do bidding on Facebook for certain keywords. You'll do kind of pay a different amount for different clicks on these different platforms. But at Smart, we kind of take industry benchmarks and kind of conservatively estimate. So usually if Smart gives you an EEMV metric or an estimated earned media value metric, the amount of money you're actually generating in visibility is typically a little higher. So that's where EEMV comes from. Tess, I don't know, did you want to add something to that?
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. It's explanatory. There's another question here from Marianne about writing the proposed text for the post under the topic you share. So do you give kind of
a suggestion for
copy suggestions? Of course, we provide that functionality, but do you use it? Yeah.
Sometimes, and I always say try to do it as less as possible, because we're sharing content on our own social media channels. So we'll try to make it personal. Why are you sharing that piece of content on your personal social media channels? But sometimes what you see in research articles or more difficult articles, it can be of added value just to put in one sentence.
Yeah.
Or if you want to have one hashtag in it, then we use it just to have that one hashtag in that post. So people are probably going to take it over. But most of the time, we try to do it as less as possible, because it needs to be personal. And otherwise, you get 6 articles that are exactly the same from 6 different specialists on the same timeline.
Yeah. So that then you kind of risk that perception of spam. And I think that's a good rule of thumb, kind of if it's a technical and like maybe a harder to understand piece of content, like a research paper, something like that, adding a sentence to kind of with the gist of the article, that's helpful. And especially hashtags, we see hashtags being a big use case. So say you're kind of doing employer branding, maybe you have life at Rabobank, life at Smart, hashtag life at Smart on the post, stuff like that. But more often than not, it pays to let employees be authentic. All right, but with that, I think we can start wrapping things up. But before we go to our closing remarks, I did want to say that, of course, we host live sessions here at Smart every month, and our next live session is already live, and we're keeping with the theme of employee advocacy. So for you guys who tuned into this one, looking for some tips on employee advocacy, this one will interest you as well. I'm going to put a link to it in the session right now. So the title of the session is called Marketing ROI Battle, Social Ads versus Employee Advocacy. And of course, when we think about allocating budget to marketing initiatives or kind of social media initiatives, social ads, paid ads are a big area of spend. So what this session, what we're hoping to do is kind of showcase how you should think about allocating that budget. Should you put it towards social ads or employee advocacy. We'll be joined by our friends at Smartly, which is another kind of great Finnish company. And if you look at the artwork on the session, it looks like it's going to be a UFC bout or something like that. So we do hope to see you there. If you click on the link, by the way, don't worry about clicking on the link. It won't take you away from the session. You'll still hear our closing remarks. But yeah, hope to see you at the next session as well. All right, but with that said, Tessa, thank you so much for joining us. This was super helpful for, just for me as well, to hear you talk about how the program has been run, what's been working, what hasn't, how you sell ROI internally, etc. So really want to thank you. Thank you for being here, and of course, thank you everybody for being in the chat. We had a good active chat with a bunch of great questions. So thank you for that. Tessa, any kind of last words of wisdom before we sign off?
No, I think it's important to keep in mind that people are talking with people, and that trust is very important. And I think that's why employee advocacy is working that well, because it's authentic. You're talking with peers, and I think it can be of great added value for your company.
Exactly.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It was a very nice conversation.
Of course. I always love chatting with you. And if any of you want to reach out to me or Tessa, especially Tessa, if you heard anything and want to ask some further questions, her information is on the screen. My information is on the screen as well. And feel free to check out SMARP, the advocacy platform that Rabobank actually uses to make a lot of this possible. But yeah, with that, thank you again, everybody, for joining. And yeah, hope to see you at the next one. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.